All right, so I read this article today that was about discrimination against Asians in Harvard admission policy and basically like all universities and basically like much of society. And it made me think that I want to go on the record and say that I think identity politics is going to fall apart because of Asians. There's many ways it has contradictions, even in my own life. Like, am I a white guy? Am I a Jewish guy? And if I am a Jewish guy, does that mean I have privilege from being a Jewish guy, or does it mean I'm a protected, like oppressed group due to anti-Semitism? And I'm also not straight, so am I oppressed in that way? Or, but I'm in a heterosexual relationship, so does that mean that I'm back to being a white guy, right? So, I have that my own identity for me calls into question the merits of identity politics because fundamentally intersectionality, which is a big term in the identity politics movement, falls apart because no person can actually be accurately categorized in a specific group. At least that's my opinion. And I was, but I'm open to the fact that, like, this is my white guy privilege speaking and that, I'm wrong. But this thing with Asians, man, they're brown. Like you can't get away from it, and they're going to wreck identity politics because one day some group of Asians are going to wake up, which is happening right now, and they're suing Harvard. But it's just the beginning, I would say, for like some mass awakening of Asians to realize that, like, wait a minute, we're not white people, and we are uh, discriminated against for having privilege in the way that white people do. And what is the privilege that Asians have? They have brain privilege, bro. Asians and Jews, Ashkenazic Jews, statistically as a group have the highest IQs. Asians have like by far the highest IQs of any racial group. And that's like the uncomfortable thing because the identity politics is kind of based at some level, at least again, my opinion, on this idea of like we're all equal, right? And I like the idea that we're all equal. Like we're all made in the image of God, or if you're an atheist, we're all made in the image of evolution. But we're not all equal in every way. And one of the main ways we're not all equal is that Asians are smarter than everybody else, statistically speaking. And frankly, in my very, very subjective personal experience as well. And same with Jews. Like when I was in Israel, it was just like, whoa, dude. People here are so freakishly smart on average. Like your average person is so smart. It's kind of blowing my mind like day after day. And, these are things that like one observes. And I, again, with the humility that comes with taking on white privilege, I just can say that that's my personal experience, and your mileage may vary. But I think it's awesome because I'm I'm certain that this is going to cause us to really have to take a deeper look because the fundamental like lie I would say of this kind of leftist identity politics is that we basically have like five groups. We have white people, we have Latino people, we have black people, we have women, and we have gay people. And like that's all you get. And of course, gay means LGBTQI and all the others letters. But where do Asians fit? And I love it. I love that it's Asian people for no particular reason. I have a real affinity for Asian people. My wife is Chinese, Cantonese, um, and many of my friends are Asian. I like Asian girl. I like a lot of girls, but I like Asian girls. Uh, and that they don't fit because they're brown, but they don't get the brown pass because they're absolutely discriminated against in college admissions. You should Google this because they've found some pretty damning evidence that what Harvard did was they have, as part of the application process, during the interview process, you get scored by both there's an application committee, and you get scored by both like an alumni kind of person and by the Harvard admission people. And Asian people, one of the characteristics you get scored on is personality. And there was this huge gap between, specifically only with Asians. They didn't find this with white people, black people, Latino people, etc., all the other colors of the under the rainbow. There was a huge gap in the personality score, specifically with Asians, between the alumni and the Harvard admissions people. And the Harvard admissions people, as my hand gesture kind of hinted at, scored Asians lower, much lower on average in their personality. So the simple Occam's razor interpretation is that there are so few parts of an application process that are subjective, right? Like SAT scores and GPA and all of these things. They're fairly objective. Like you can't really debate them. But personality is real, like, I think I like this person. I don't think that person's Harvard material. So they have like this loophole where they can just like cancel out a bunch of Asians because the goal, you have to understand. See, here's the thing. The goal they have, it's like the subprime mortgage crisis. And I'm not going to explain how it's like that, but it is that they have these quotas they're trying to meet, right? They have an ideal demographic split racially, right? So they want X percent of black people, Y percent of white people, Z percent of Asian people, and A percent of Latino people, right? And then, of course, native people and foreign people, and on we go. But if they were objective, right? If it was based on merit, right? Like we live in theoretically, the United States, this is like the greatest thing about the United States, is that at least in theory, it's a meritocracy. Like Thomas Jefferson, Jeffersonian meritocracy. That was his whole ideal, is that this was a place unlike Europe, unlike India with the caste system and all that, where the best and the brightest would rise to the top, right? But the problem is that the best and the brightest are Asians, bro. If we really like let the meritocracy happen, not to mention that there's like billions of them in Asia. There's so many of them, quantity wise. Like all these top schools in the United States, universities, they would be almost all Asian. I mean, this is kind of a known thing that MIT, Caltech, Stanford, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, almost all of them have to like scale back the amount of Asians, right? And I understand that at some level this isn't funny. This is people's lives. Like I do at some level understand that, but like, I'm a typical like privileged white guy who thinks everything is funny because he can. And that's the crack in the whole system. And you see it. I mean, to some extent, you see it. Like, there was so much discrimination against South Asians in the past, like Indian people. And now I was just thinking to myself, wow, man, the CEO of Microsoft, Google, and Adobe are all Indian, right? And then Zuckerberg and Larry Page and Sergey Brin, and I can't, I'm sure like a lot of the other ones are Jews, right? And I can't think in terms. Oh, and also here's the thing. Here's the I'm so glad I remembered to say this. Dude, Asian people were hardcore discriminated against in the past. So it's not like Japanese people were interned, bro. My college girlfriend, who was half Japanese, her grandmother spent something like 30 years of her life lobbying the government for reparations for Japanese people, because during World War II, for those that don't know, the U.S. government, because we were at war with Japan, and there was this fear that like Japanese people here, even people that had been here, 100 years already or more, could potentially like infiltrate and become spies. So they ended up interning them. And what internment means is they took everything. They took their houses, they took their money, and they sent them on these marches to like basically concentration camps, right? Maybe that's a little bit over dramatic, but if it is, it's only a little bit over what they're, I'm sorry, not concentration, internment camps. That's the actual technical name for it, for those that don't know. And then when they came back from internment, like their stuff was just taken. It was just gone. Like, and an article came out earlier this year in California that white farmers in Central California, because for those that don't know, like now in California, farming is heavily associated with Mexican and Latino people. But in that era, farming was completely associated with Japanese people. Like Japanese were just the known, that's who your gardener is, that's who does the farming in those Fresno and these kind of Central Valley places that are where all the produce is grown. And the white farmers just like took all their land. They're like, yeah, intern them, bro. These Japs gotta go. So anyway, the point is that like, and same with me, frankly, right? You can be like, oh, he's a white guy, right? But dude, I don't really know who my great grandparents are, and I don't really know where I'm from, because my great grandparents were like fleeing pogroms and holocausts in Europe, and they had to make up fake identities and fake countries. And by the time like you get down to me, the records, like one parent, like great grandparent, the passport says they're from Czechoslovakia, and one says they're from Romania, and the other one says they're from like Ukraine. So it's like made up, to escape, right? So it's like, how much privilege is that? Escaping a continent. That's how I end up here. That's the reason I'm in the United States, is because my great-grandparents had to escape Europe, right? So the thing is that you can't say, yeah, but Asians haven't been oppressed, right? And I guarantee you that there's a lot of young people of all races, maybe even including Asian races, that are kind of brainwashed by like leftist identity politics, that would think that, but dude, it's not true. And not to like, the Chinese built the railroads. It's not a joke. Like they brought over Chinese people to be glorified slaves to build the railroads, and basically paid them nothing. And then when they're done, it's like, good luck. And that's why San Francisco and the Bay Area has such a huge Chinese population, because they just ended up staying there once they built the railroad from the East Coast to the West Coast. So, that's a good one, bro. That's a rant right there. And I'm telling you, it's going to happen. Mark my words, because it's a huge, glaring, gaping hole in the sort of like righteousness of identity politics. Asians, from the perspective of oppression, should absolutely be a protected minority, but they're discriminated against. And what I'm saying is that affirmative action is about helping protected minorities who have been discriminated against get a leg up and succeed on their own merit. Because, like, for instance, here's another thing with Jews, right? In my grandparents' age, right, why are so many Jews doctors and lawyers, and the Jews run the media, and the Jews run Hollywood and all that stuff? It's because they were banned, like in the early 1920s, 1930s, like that. Newspaper ads would say, with for job openings would say Gentiles only, or no Jews. So these were careers: dentist, doctor, lawyer, accountant, Hollywood, like studio producer, that nobody has to hire you. You can make your own way. So the Jews all kind of gravitated in those directions because the culture always places such an emphasis on education, right? So yeah, I mean, like these protected minorities are now being discriminated against. I believe the data shows that Asians have to score on average 200 points higher on the SATs than other racial groups, and depending on which racial group, it can be as much as 500 points higher on the SATs to be accepted to the same university. So the end result of this, which is why I'm making this video, is we're going to reach a point where it's like, okay, we're all individuals and the game is on. You can learn anything you want on the internet, and that goes for everybody in the world. Bro, I've been to Southeast Asia. I have an audience from India, these really poor countries. Everybody's got smartphones. Everybody's got the internet. You can educate yourself. It's go time. You can build your own brand, and this group identity is ultimately laying the traps for its own destruction. And I'm somebody that really believes in equality of opportunity, and I definitely believe that many groups have been historically, I would say like the number one group in my mind is women, right? And I would not necessarily call myself a feminist either, but like huge groups of people have had opportunities either denied to them or things have been made significantly more difficult. And I'm very much supportive of all efforts to address that and to create opportunity for as many people that have been underserved as possible. But identity politics, fail. Peace out.